Hi, this is Courtney Starhart, and I'm here today to talk to you about mythology, about culture, and about our cosmovision, especially in terms of heaven and hell. So this talk will be labeled Heaven and Hell. Like many kids, when I was little, I was taken to church or to some kind of religious ceremonies. In my case, it was church. And I was told stories. No one had really evaluated the merit or the worth of the stories. They were just what was passed on to us. And as I got older and I started to grow up and question things a little bit, one of my big questions was about heaven and hell. Since heaven and hell are notions that pretty much predominate everyone's life as a Christian, I think it's something that needs to be evaluated. When I was in college, I studied cross-cultural communications, and a lot of that work had to do with looking at socialization, looking at psychology, and looking at culture. A great deal of the psyche of the human being is developed essentially through story and through what we choose to believe in. So as I started looking at all of this, I started to question this fundamental notion in Christianity and other religions about heaven and hell. Is there such a thing as heaven, and is there such a thing as hell? And if so, who goes where and why? I mean, I suppose that there are some Christians who think that all Jews are going to hell. Jews don't have any notion of hell, and so when I heard that, I thought, well, that's nifty. So at least they're not sending anyone to a dark and dreary place in the afterlife. I don't know about Islam or any other religions, and I won't try to speak to it. But the bottom line is that we all have different stories that we're told. So in Christianity, they tell you that if you do something it's unchristian, or if, in the case of being Catholic, that if you're not a Catholic, then you're going to go to hell. That really bothered me because my father was Protestant, and some of my relations on my grandmother's side were Catholic. Some were Native American, and I thought, wow, all these people have such different stories. Is there any way of sussing out like a higher truth? So what I started doing was looking at different maps and systems for understanding different parts of our consciousness, our psyche, and where does our spirit go in the afterlife, and all of these things. In another session, I'm going to tell you the story of Persephone, of the river Styx, and Hades, and that's the story that we use in drum journeying in order to have kind of a framework. So, looking at this tree of life business here, this is your physical body, and you can see the medicine wheel lays in there really nicely, which I've given another talk on. This is the astral plane, okay? And we travel on the drum journey from this level to this level of consciousness. And there is an unconscious realm in here, and there is a darker aspect of an unconscious realm where people are kind of trapped in a hell-like place. But you notice when you're journeying that all of those creatures are living in hell in their own mind. There's not like an assigned place where there's like a goat-like being with a pitchfork. None of that exists in here anywhere. So I thought, well, that's odd. It's not in that map. And then I came to New Mexico and started studying with a Pueblo shaman who's now well known because of his being featured in The Spirit Molecule. And this guy has taken enough DMT to get, into like other dimensions and completely gone. And he also says that nowhere out there in his journeys or his travels has he found a concrete place that's called hell. What he said, and I want to share this because I think it's really important, is the only place that you can go to hell is in your own mind. And that a lot of people have these thoughts that cause them torment and suffering, but that those are just thought patterns, that we can actually heal that through prayer and practice and ceremony. So that was one thing. The only place that you can live in hell is in your own mind. All right. What happens is a lot of the information and tools that we once had as human beings have been lost. Sadly, they've been confiscated by what could be known as the patriarchy in an attempt to exert mind control. I mean, you can extort money from people only when they're truly, truly afraid that something bad is going to happen if they don't give it to you, right? And so I think that a lot of this heaven and hell business is kind of a power play, a mind control thing. So I'd like to liberate you and tell you that there are many different techniques that even if you're in that kind of hellish place in your own mind right now and you're suffering, there are tons of techniques that we use to shift ourselves. And once you've gotten out of that suffering place, then it's pretty easy to imagine that you don't want to go back there. And so we do drum journeys oftentimes to take people to retrieve parts of themselves that have fragmented because of trauma or stress or shock. Drum journeying, we also take you to the middle world, to a place in a garden where you remember feeling comfortable in your body. A lot of what happens is that people are actually afraid of physical harm happening to them or emotional harm. People fear suffering and so are in a state of fear more often than not because the fear of suffering. Well, suffering is just an innate condition. I mean, if you have a body and you're incarnate, you're in a state of suffering. The body is an uncomfortable thing. Spirit and matter are essentially like oil and water, so it's innately an uncomfortable situation to be in. So there are many different reasons why suffering is just kind of an innate human condition. But what I appeal to is the higher aspect of you, and I say, well, we're hue, we're light, and we're man, matter. So it's not just the body. And once someone has pointed out to you and taken you through the portal of spirit, and you realize that those two are as one, then you can start to sort out what you want and what you don't want. And most of us really don't want emotional or mental suffering. Some people have biochemical conditions, and that's a different thing when you have mental illness because your body is innately flawed. But most of us just have trauma. We're in some kind of varied state of PTSD, in and out of flux. And what we need to do is start to recognize that we have the ability to move away from that. So we have training for the body, we have training for the mind, and we have training for all kinds of different things, for vision, for artistic pursuits. But in order to get away from suffering, the first thing you need to do is realize that you don't have to be there. So just like the heaven and hell thing, nobody really goes to hell except for people who believe they deserve to suffer. If you're willing to change your mind and change your story, then you have the ability to change your level of happiness and maybe even experience peace and joy. So that is my talk on heaven and hell. Thank you for now. Bye.